This is Charter California Edition. I'm Brad Pomerance. We're joined by Josie Gonzales. She's a member of the Board of Supervisors in San Bernardino County, and I want to speak about your county. As you know, during the economic downturn, the recession, Riverside County, San Bernardino County, Imperial County, much of inland California was really hit hard. Unemployment was soaring at rates like we had never seen, 14, 15%. Recent numbers indicate that unemployment in the IE is now below 10%. That's a huge accomplishment in a lot of ways. Or is it? What are you seeing on the ground?
First of all, thank you for having me.
Please.
It's a pleasure to be here.
Of course.
And what I say about these economic indicators is that it's very necessary to look at an alignment, if you will, of a multiple of economic elements, from housing to the unemployment rates, to making sure that our roads, our community development elements are all in good working order, because we've had a mass exodus, whether it be of property owners and high number of rental properties, and now we're looking to be able to increase the owner-occupied percentage.
And I want to speak to you about housing, because I've looked at some of the numbers in the Inland Empire, and at first blush, they look very positive. Housing prices up year to date in San Bernardino County, almost 20%, in Riverside County, over 25%. The challenge, though, is that a lot of the sales are going to all cash buyers. And those all cash buyers are Wall Street investors, they're foreign buyers, and they're buying them not so much to flip them, but to renovate and to rent.
You're absolutely correct. And it's those high rental percentages in any given city that drive the interest rate when cities go to borrow money for projects that improve the community, from infrastructure
Right.
all the way to any other community services. So it's imperative that homeowners realize that it's to their best interest to make sure that their families stay close, that here in the Inland Empire, they purchase their homes, they look for a beautiful place to settle down.
Here's the challenge. I have many friends who are trying to buy homes in the Inland Empire. They are getting outbid time and time again by all cash buyers.
You're right,
They
but
can't
that's a
compete.
double-edged
Right,
sword.
that's the problem.
It's a good thing on one hand, because it means that property values are beginning to rise, and we all would benefit from that. And at the same time, as you're saying, it increases that rental property percentage, which drives the cost and the quality of the community a little bit south.
Are you concerned that with values rising so quickly, 20% in 1 year, that we're headed to yet another balloon that's going to pop?
Yes, very concerned about that. Ideally, we need to have anywhere from a 2.5 to a 3.5 percentage incremented growth. Could we stay there, we would be able to secure the growth. When we skyrocket into the tune of 20%, that's ludicrous. We won't be able to maintain that, and we'll be coming down fast.
And I saw a study, the 10 top fastest recovering zip codes in the state. 3 of them are in the Inland Empire, 2 in the city of San Bernardino, and both of them have values rising over 75% year to date.
75% from how low?
Yeah,
What's
right,
the
from
threshold?
the bottom.
Yeah,
I
that's my
misspoke. It's
point.
actually from the bottom.
Yes.
But still, exciting on the one hand, but how do we sustain?
Can't sustain. And if we are not careful, if the electeds in the city of San Bernardino don't wake up to the potential disaster that this means when you have outside investors coming in and cherry picking,
Right.
if you will, prime real estate that with careful attention and development could in fact bring benefit to the future of the city.
What could a city, a county do? Is there anything they can do to prevent or avoid this cherry picking by investors?
Well, I think that it's necessary to bring in the banks, necessary to be looking at organizations such as the Inland Empire Economic Partnership, that then there is a collaboration from the different avenues, whether it be commercial, residential, industrial, looking at where strategically should the money be going, where is the projected growth areas, and being able, by working together through a common vision, which is missing. Everyone kind of comes out of the gate and wants to run in their own direction. But that's not the answer. We have to work together because ultimately we're all in the same economic mess.
Right, and with two of those zip codes in the city of San Bernardino, I'm not sure if they're in the part of the city that you represent as a county supervisor, I find it hard to see how that collaboration can occur when the city of San Bernardino is going through bankruptcy.
Yes.
And so what can be done in that situation?
Truthfully, nothing.
Oh, I understand.
Because in the House of the City of San Bernardino, there is an elected body that is directly responsible for this and a multiple of other issues. And the prioritization of these issues does not seem to be present there at this time. And consequently, it's haphazard, happenstance, what's happening with the real estate market when outside investors are allowed to come in without the overall oversight of the elected body to protect the well-being.
I want to shift gears, if I may, and talk about an exciting grand opening that occurred in your community.
Yes.
And it just shows that even during tough economic times, because clearly this had to have occurred in terms of construction during the tougher economic times,
yes,
government can still move forward. I'd love for you to tell me about the Baker Family Learning Center.
I'm so excited to be able to share with you and the listening audience about the Baker Family Learning Center. How did it all come about?
Please.
It came about by saving money. I saved as much money as I could. Once I became supervisor, one of my priorities was to bring community development to the unincorporated areas. Muscoy, being one of the largest unincorporated areas, truly had not had any economic improvement or investment in many years. And I happened to be there for the grand opening of the fire department, which was their first brand new building in over 50 years. And as I was sitting there, one of the first things I did after being elected, I happened to be sitting next to Neil Baker. Neil Baker, owner of Baker's Drive-Thru. And I dropped something on the ground and we were sitting on the dirt. And as I bent over to pick it up, he said, what do you think about this dirt? And I said, I love dirt. I love real estate. I says, it's what our homes are built on. It's what communities are made out of. I said, I love dirt. And he said, you want it?
Come on.
And I said, yes. And he said, I donated the property for the fire station. He said, and I hear good things about you. He said, and I like you. He says, and I trust you. And I want you to have the land. And we shook hands on that. And by the end of the week, he had his attorneys draw up the grant deed and started the process to donate the land to the county. I immediately started setting the money aside. It took me 8 years to save enough money, and consequently,
it was worth the wait.
Because of the planning, you're absolutely correct. The construction took place during the leanest economic times when jobs were the scarcest, but it ensured that the project got done. We had the opening here recently, 11,000 square feet of a library with preschool services on an 11,000 square foot building.
Congratulations. She's Josie Gonzales. I'm Brad Pomerance. This is Charter California Edition.
At its peak, how high did the unemployment rate reach in the Inland Empire?
It's Charter California Edition. I'm Brad Pomerance. Our guest is Dan Harp. He is the Assistant Assessor in San Bernardino County, which is what exactly? What's the Assessor's office?
Well, the Assessor's office, as we may all probably should know,
Right.
it's an elected official,
Right?
theoretically nonpartisan,
Right?
and his legal responsibilities is really for the discovery, listing, and valuing of all taxable property in San Bernardino County.
And let's talk about taxable property. It's been an interesting few years, suffice it to say, in the Inland Empire. We know that in the mid part of the last decade, property values were soaring throughout the Inland Empire. Then the recession hit, and this area was just hammered. Explain to me what you were seeing on the ground over the last 5 years, because you were right in the middle of it.
Well, Brad, as you mentioned, this real estate market in the early 2000s was a roller coaster, peaking probably somewhere in 2007.
That's the peak?
In my opinion, 2007, summer plus or minus year would be the peak. Of course, for the gain for the assessor's office in the county of San Bernardino would be the revenue that was generated by the increasing real estate market.
Right.
As we know, assessments are obviously tied into real estate prices. So as a result, as people were buying property, resulting in reassessments, our assessment roll was increasing dramatically.
But what's so interesting about California under Prop 13, it used to be that the assessor would assess fairly often. This is pre-1978. So as values would be rising, the assessments would come in and more money would be coming in. But that's not how it is today, where you only see an assessment or reassessment with the sale of a property. Is that correct?
That's correct. In fact, the inception of Prop 13 was brought into being to stem out that tide, because as we know, in the late 70s, real estate prices were increasing rapidly. Folks were being literally taxed out of their house. So
literally.
Howard Jarvis, Paul Gann put together the Prop 13 initiative that overwhelmingly passed, and it changed dramatically how assessors perform our business.
But there's also something called Prop 8. And Prop 8 does allow for a form of reassessment, and you've been very busy with Prop 8 reassessments.
That is correct.
Talk to us about Prop 8.
Well, a little history on Prop 8 was when Prop 13 was enacted in '78, Proposition 13 did not take into consideration the possibility that real estate prices could decline in San Bernardino.
Right. Or anywhere for that matter.
Or anywhere for that matter. But California has always been somewhat of a state, real estate being very, expensive here for whatever reason. So Proposition 8 was a proposition that was voted on shortly after the enactment of 13 in November of '78, and it closed out loophole in Prop 13 where it allowed assessors to recognize declines in value.
So what many folks have done throughout the state, not just the Inland Empire, is they will go to the assessor and seek a reevaluation. Is that correct?
That is correct. In fact, what we've done in San Bernardino County is we've tried to be proactive when the market was going down dramatically. Of course, people could come in and contact us, write us letters through our website, let us know they thought they should be reassessed. We tried to be proactive and identify single-family homes or condominiums that we thought needed to have their assessment reviewed.
But what happens when those properties start to increase in value after you reassessed?
That's the point where the assessor turns from the good guy to the bad guy here, and this is something we're going through at this very moment.
So, if your property value drops and you don't seek a reassessment, you're not subject to a reevaluation.
That's correct.
But if you had received a reassessment, the taxman could come back.
In fact, we're mandated by law is once we review property and we put it on this Proposition 8 status, we will review the property's value every year on lien date being January 1st, to determine has the value gone up or has it gone down.
Well, let's talk about what's happening in this area, because as I understand it, it is, I don't know if it's the same kind of halcyon craziness that we saw in the mid part of the last decade, but in San Bernardino County, year to date, property housing sales have gone up almost 20%. In Riverside County, over 25%. We have really seen a pretty quick spike in values.
Yes, we are saying the same thing here. I have my data sources too. I look at median home prices, and this is what the decision was made by the assessor and myself and my management to be not aggressive, but to make the decision that it was time to consider raising values now, which is, from a political standpoint, it's not a very popular decision. However, we're really regulated by the law, and the law requires whatever the market value is on the particular lien date, we're required to
How do you
enroll
determine
that.
market value?
Pretty simple process for us. We use same appraisal methodology as any other appraiser, bank appraiser, or
Right.
We look at comparable sales.
And I want to talk more about what's happening in the Inland Empire, because what we're seeing is home values increasing, which isn't necessarily a bad thing. I mean, in some areas they plummeted 60, 70, 90%, so it's not necessarily a bad thing. But it's happening in such a way that if you want to buy a home in the Inland Empire, you're not bidding against your local neighbor. You're bidding against these Wall Street investors, these foreign buyers that are coming in. They want to clean up the home a little bit and then rent it. And so I was reading recently, for example, in 2012 in San Bernardino County, 38.5% of all sales were all cash offers. These weren't our local neighbors. These are wealthy investors.
We've seen the same thing
Right.
where we're seeing more rental properties,
Right.
which is maybe